PMC, Pennsylvania Military College, was established in 1821 to prepare young men for the entry of college. The PMC was the first school to receive federal arms for training, and the cadets became well known for their leadership, scholarship, and military service to their country. The Communications Department is honored to present Voices from Freedom, where alumni from the Pennsylvania Military College have the chance to reflect on some of their favorite memories during this pivotal point in their lifetime.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Voices of Freedom. I would like to introduce our panelists. We have Colonel Jack Dempsey, retired, Dave Esto, Bill Fike, and Colonel Robert Morris, retired. They are the class of 70. My name is Hannah Specht. I will be the moderator. One of the moderators. Kyra is also going to be my partner in crime. I am a sophomore nursing major, and I am also a cadet in Widener's ROTC program.
Hi everyone, my name is Kyra Jones. I am also going to be a moderator for this year's event. I am a senior communication studies major. My concentration is broadcast journalism. So I'm really excited to host this event and hear these wonderful stories.
All right, and we would just like to let the panelists and everyone in the audience know that this event will be recorded. All right, so firstly, if our panelists could just state their name, their class, and their cadet number, tell us a little something about themselves, and then tell us why they chose PMC. So we'll start with Colonel Jack Dempsey.
Yeah, Jack Dempsey here. I'm a Philly boy, home of soft pretzels and cheesesteaks. Basically learned about the PMC through my electric shop teacher, and mainly it was called a great engineering school. But before I get any more stuff, I want to thank both Ron and the staff from Widener Alumni Office for putting this thing on. Great chance for some of us guys and gals to get together, so I appreciate that. And one other thing I want to start out with too is, you forgot Bill Fike is a retired general officer. So, you know, Bill, I want to make sure you do presence there. So.
Oh, I'm so sorry about that.
Okay. No worries.
Yeah. Anything else?
If you could state your class and your cadet number, and then tell us why you chose PMC.
Okay. As I said, I heard about PMC as being a great engineering school. So great. I started out in engineering and changed to science. But my cadet number is 169, and like everybody else here on this thing is class of 70. So.
All right, Dave Esto, if you'd like to go next.
Yes, thank you very much. Dave Esto, cadet number 195. I was born and raised in upstate New York and had applied to a few colleges, and all of a sudden got something in the mail from Pennsylvania Military College. Looked it over with my parents, and my dad really started showing a lot of interest for me. I was in the height of the Vietnam War, of course, in the mid-60s. And one of the things that resonated that he said is, you can be a lot better going in as an officer if you have to go to Vietnam than as an enlistee. So the more I looked at it, the more I liked it. And one thing led to another. And I had the infamous day in my lunchroom, having lunch with my high school classmates, and the guidance counselor walked in and said, "Congratulations, you've been accepted at Pennsylvania Military College in the strongest worded acceptance letter I've ever seen in my career." And I opened up the envelope, and it was from Mr. Lindsley, and it was pretty strongly worded, telling me that I needed to make sure I buckled down and did the right thing when I got into the school.
All right, thank you. And Bill Fike, if you'd like to go next.
Thank you. Again, my name is Bill Fike. I grew up in Western Connecticut, a little town called Trumbull, Connecticut, and my cadet number was 218. I heard about PMC by pure serendipity. I was sitting with my best friend at the time, a fellow named Fred Radell, who was going in the Navy. And we were sitting in study hall in the library, and we were just going through college catalogs. And I had already applied to a few schools. I wasn't the best in high school, but we pulled out the PMC catalog and started looking at it. And Fred challenged me to apply to Pennsylvania Military College. And I did. And much to my surprise and the surprise of everybody else in my family, I was accepted. And another strongly worded acceptance letter, it said, "Welcome to Pennsylvania Military College, and thank God you're not majoring in biology." And that's how I got the PMC.
Thank you. And Robert Morris.
Robert G. Morris III, cadet number 382. Born in Philadelphia. I'm a Philly boy, just like Jack. However, as circumstances presented themselves, I ended up in Chicago, growing up in Chicago, because my father, after the Korean War ended there, to do his residency in radiology. So I grew up in Chicago, and I was at a small school, high school in Chicago, in Hyde Park, where I lived. And I applied, my sole goal and function was to be a commissioned officer in the Army, to follow my father into the Army. And I applied to all 5 military colleges, and I got a variety of strongly worded letters back, but the one that I got back from Pennsylvania Military College was one of acceptance. And I flew out with my dad for an interview, and I was accepted, and I was very happy about that. And that started a 4-year odyssey that I shared along with my classmates. So that's how I ended up at PMC, and I was very happy that I was able to go there, and very grateful still today.
Thank you all so much, and thank you all for being here. And I'll pass it over to Kyra for the first question.
All right, so our first question today is going to be, what was a typical day like at the PMC? So, Jack, if you want to start.
Well, I think first question you have to answer there is, what year are you talking about? Now, if you're talking about my first year as a rook, before being recognized, I think the word miserable comes to mind. You know, when I registered for PMC, I was a bit chunky. And one of the memories I have of first couple of days there is something called a square meal. And I ended up, after a lot of PT and square meals, of losing about 35 pounds my first semester. So very interesting as far as the discipline that was instilled upon us there for that first year. After that, things got much easier. I almost enjoyed it. By my senior year, I actually did have a great time. So.
That's great. I love to hear that. And how about next, Dave?
Yeah, I think pretty much the same story. It was, you know, the rook year was like no other year in anybody's life. I remember the first, and you may have heard this term before, bracing party that we had. We'd actually been in school probably 2 or 3 days, and we heard about all these other companies having these parties, bracing parties, and we were kind of, in Charlie Company, we were kind of wondering what was going on. And our XO is a fellow named Kurt Belser, who graduated in '67. And he said, it's going to be pretty easy for the first couple of days till you guys get your uniforms. And then when we got the uniforms, well, the rest is history. Bracing parties. And then, you know, we were told we're going to be recognized as cadets on Mother's Day. So if you do the math, it's about 8 months. And I remember thinking to myself, this is what my next 8 months of my life is going to be like. Very, very difficult. But we all got through it. Well, some of us got through it. We lost a lot of guys in the process. But the next year was as Jack said, much more fun. And by the time we were juniors and seniors, it was a great place to be. I've said in my bio, I probably laughed more during our senior year in college than I did the 10 years after I got out of college. It was really a very, very good experience.
That's great. I love to hear that. And Bill, can you go next, please?
Sure. That first year, as everybody has said, is different than every other year. We were challenged. We were harassed. We had people would crash into your room and destroy your room. Had to put it together again and have it re-inspected. They were enforcing standards, establishing standards. At the same time, I was personally taking 21 credit hours in college. And so we often forgot that between the two lives, whether it's the academic life or the cadet life, they always weren't complementary of each other. I remember sleeping on my desk because I didn't want to mess up my bunk for the Saturday morning inspections. But there were enforced study hours, I think between 7 and 10 p.m. at night. We had to study, which was good for me because I wasn't a real disciplined student before I came there. But it also was a time when we built terrific friendships because we were all in the same boat. We were all going through the same challenges. We were all in the same cauldron. And we became brothers. And so it was a challenging experience, but one that benefited me for a lifetime, and I greatly appreciate it.
I love hearing that. Definitely friendship is the route to getting through, college, and gaining those experiences, and those friendships definitely take you far. So Robert, do you want to go last but not least?
Not a problem. I was in Bravo Company, and the most significant thing that happened that I remember was my XO. And just for reference point, the company XO ran the Rook program, was a senior officer on the floor for the Rook program. And mine was Hayden Wilbur. He was a Marine. He had just come back from platoon leader's course, and he used to love to play this game called high water, low water. He would stand at the end of the corridor and say, "Gentlemen, the tide is out." And the tide is in, and everything had to go in the room on the top bunk. So it was all this crashing. And then he would say, "Gentlemen, the tide is out," and everything had to go back in place. And I'm talking about desks and chairs and everything. And you guys remember that. The other thing he did was he had his Marine sword, or he had his cadet sword, and he used to walk down the hallway and make us stand at a brace with our mattresses in front of us, and then stick this sword through the mattress, and that kind of frightened some guys. I mean, yeah. I thought he was totally crazy and off his rocker, but he's still around somewhere. But that was my most salient memories of my freshman year. I was an economics major, absolutely the wrong decision I made. I quickly, after the first year, switched over to English, and then had to survive a gentleman by the name of Homer Nearing, who was the Shakespeare teacher. But like the rest of my brothers here, the junior and senior years were a bit easier. If you had a grade point average, you were able to get a car, and that increased our mobility. I was looking through the yearbook, and I saw my car was in there with the sticker that said "Save the Corps," So that was my one great addition to the yearbook. But anyway, I thought that PMC really instilled in me some great habits. But I did, like the rest of them, I laughed more my senior year than I did for the first 10 years after I got out. That is no joke. So that's about it for me.
Thank you, gentlemen, so much for sharing those stories. So I'm going to turn it over to Hannah, and she will be doing the next question.
All right, the next question we have for you is, how well do you think the military program prepared you to be a leader? And what lessons did you learn from that? So, Robert, if you'd like to start, since you went last time.
You know, I've thought a lot about this question. I think I was prepared on many levels. I remember I served a tour as an assignments officer in the artillery in Germany. And these are the guys that Hannah will call you and say, guess what, you're going to Korea. Or, you know, you've been in the States too long, you're going here. So he had a sign above, my boss had a sign above his desk that basically said, if you don't say it, you don't have to explain it. And that was a lesson that I learned very, very early at PMC, was to keep your mouth shut and not say something that you would inadvertently, you know, say and then have to explain the meaning later. The other thing was that I first learned that officer, the real function of an officer, and I was told this twice at different points in my career, the real function of an officer is to protect those people that are unable to protect themselves. And I was told that in counseling a couple of times in the Army. And I first learned that at PMC, that through the teamwork exercises and things, and just living there, it dawned on me that being an officer was much, much more than just shouting orders. Or, I mean, you actually are responsible, and you're responsible for human beings. And a lot of your soldiers are really unable to protect themselves when somebody gives an order that may or may not be either valid or make sense. And so our mission is to protect those soldiers, that those younger soldiers that can't protect themselves. So that was the two big lessons that I learned. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, and that's extremely important and something we're still taught in the ROTC program today. Bill, if you'd like to go next.
I think when I think about it, what I learned at my experience at PMC was first about standards and maintaining high standards. I learned about self-discipline. I learned how to follow before I learned how to lead. I also learned what bad leadership looks like and what good leadership looks like. All the leaders at PMC that I experienced were not necessarily good leaders. But, you know, you kind of took a note that says, okay, this is something that I want to note. And I learned from bad leadership as well as good leadership. I think it was, you know, the importance of cohesion, the power of cohesion in any organization, the power of mutual respect, the fact that BG alluded to, being a leader isn't just going around ordering people to do things. That golf club is always in your bag, but you've got to inspire people to do things that they wouldn't necessarily want to do on their own. And those are lessons that I took from PMC. I learned to challenge myself, to take on jobs that I normally wouldn't have done, and forced me to be better than I thought I could be. So those are some of the things that I took from me throughout from PMC that I put in my military career and then on to my career in the corporate world that have paid big dividends for me. So thanks for the question. I appreciate it.
Of course, thank you so much. And Dave, you'd like to go next?
Yeah, thanks. You know, I stumbled on some values that one of the companies I worked for several years ago, and you know, it's a big thing in the business world to have a mission statement, a vision statement, and values. And this company I was working for at the time came out with these values, and I thought, this is PMC. And the values were passion, integrity, teamwork, accountability, and achievement. And that really sums it up. If I look at what I did without even knowing those values, I was living those values when I graduated from PMC and went into the world of high-tech semiconductors. And it was just something that was was there. And it was created over the 4 years of being at PMC through all of the trials and tribulations. You walked away with responsibility and knowing what you had to do and what was the right thing to do. And I remember one of my bosses saying, you know, the definition of discipline and integrity is doing something even when no one else is looking. And I think that was one of the other things that we learned in school, that was the right thing. You just did the right thing.
Thank you so much. And Jack.
Yeah, I'd say attention to detail and discipline without anything else to explain. But I think the biggest thing I learned there is I'll say management of stress. And as we mentioned, that the Rook year was really tough. And I learned if you took things in small bites, one day at a time, I can make it to Thanksgiving, I can make it to Christmas, I can make it to Recognition Day, and did it in small bites, you can get through almost anything. And that served me well for the rest of my life. So.
Well, thank you all so much. And it's great to hear that these lessons translated past the academy and into your daily life, into your civilian life after the military. So, Kyra, would you like to ask the next question?
Yes, thank you, Hannah. So our next question is going to be, was there a defining moment in your life while you were at the PMC? So Jack, if you want to start us off, that'll be great.
I can't say an exact moment, but, you know, like Bill, I started out with about 21 hours, most of it lab work. So I was doing 37 hours a week. And I was not the best student, I must admit. I struggled through most of my first couple of years. And I guess probably the middle of my junior year, I finally realized I'm going to make it. I'm actually going to make it and graduate from this place. And in my mind, that's probably the most profound time. Says, yeah, wow, I'm going to finally get enough grade point average to make it and graduate, get a commission. That was probably my biggest time in PMC.
Yes, thank you. And Dave, you want to go next?
Sure, it's an easy, memorable moment to remember. It was called the midterm semester grades. And right before we got the grades, we were in the famous step out. You would hear the voice say, Charlie Company, third floor, Howe Hall, step out. And then of course you'd all scramble and step out. And the cadre officers were asking us, you're going to be getting your semester grades, your mid-semester grades. How do you think you're all going to do? And they went down the entire company of rooks. And, you know, I remember hearing wide and varied stories, and the most memorable of which was one who said, yes, sir, I've got all A's. And when the report came out, he had a 0.00 GPA. And about 2 weeks later, he was gone. That was the bad story. My story is not much better. My GPA was 1.4. I think it was either 1.41 or 1.44, but who's counting? And it dawned on me that after looking at the 8 months I was going to spend as a rook and the 1.41 grade point average, I might not have to worry about being a rook for 8 months. Yeah. And it was the dawning of, hey, you better get serious, you better get this fixed, or you're not going to be here. And I know there's a whole bunch of people probably listening to this call and some on this call that had a very similar experience. So that was the wake-up call.
I'm glad you had that wake-up call, definitely. Thank you, Dave. And Bill, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I mean, just like Dave, because of the challenges we had at Rooks, the academics suffered with almost everybody that I knew there. We spent the next 3 years building our grade point average up in order to graduate. And I think that two significant events at PMC impacted on me. The first one was Recognition Day, when we were no longer rooks. And we'd gotten through that tough time that went on 24/7 in the previous 8 months. And right then I knew that I was going to make it. I knew that I had gone through the toughest part and I was going to make it. And I knew I was going to come back the next year and finish my time at PMC. And the second time, the second most memorable event at PMC was Commissioning Day. I always wanted to have a military career. My family had a military background. My father was an Army brat. And that day I achieved my goal of becoming an officer in the United States Army, as well as graduating from an accredited university, college and university, which I got to tell you, surprised a lot of people at the time, and maybe mostly me. But those are the two most memorable days for me at Pennsylvania Military College in my experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bill. And last but not least, Robert.
Well, I got to join in with my brothers. I have to say that the end of the rookie year recognition was my average was terrible. I'm even embarrassed to repeat it at this point. But it was worse than Dave's. But surviving that and all that went with it was a defining moment. I actually had three. Surviving Homer Nearing's Shakespeare course, which was one I absolutely had to pass to stay in college in my sophomore year, was, you know, if you're an English major, you either survived Homer Nearing or you didn't. I mean, he is a legend around there. And I run into guys that have had him along with me, and they agree that he was there was none other like him. He had oral examinations of Shakespeare. You had to memorize the plays. So surviving him was one. And then graduation and commissioning. It was the only time I saw my father cry. He came, he was standing in the background, and he showed up, and he handed me $50 and said, "This will get you to Fort Benning." And I was on my way down there for initial training, and we had a talk, and that was it. But I knew that he actually considered me a grown man at that point. So that was a defining moment for me. Thanks for the question.
Thank you, and thank you, gentlemen, for answering that question. We can definitely learn something from those defining moments. So Hannah, if you want to take over and asking the next question, that'd be great.
Absolutely. So my next question is, what are some of the favorite events that you have that were held at PMC? Robert, if you'd like to go first.
I think getting ready for the parades that wasn't too cool, but actually marching in the parades and being in the parades, I really enjoyed that. Looking back on it now, I spent as with everybody else, I spent a lot of time shining shoes, signing brass, but being a part of that, I considered a social event because I was able to get out of my room and go do something in an authorized manner. The junior ring dance, I thought, was another defining social event. And I think that was about, unless I've forgotten something, those were the two big ones that I remember.
Thank you so much. And Bill, if you'd like to go next.
Yeah, I think, I mean, there's a number of events. I mean, Mother's Day was a big deal, and I was proud that my mother was able to travel down to Chester and participate in that. Junior ring dance was terrific, but myself and a number of other cadets were also in the PMC Band. And that gave us the opportunity. When I was a freshman, we marched in the Mardi Gras parade in New Orleans. We spent a night on a Navy aircraft carrier. We played at a halftime show at an Eagles game, which was a big event. We marched in the Cherry Blossom Festival when I was a senior in Washington, D.C. We marched in the St. Patrick's Day parade in New York City. And so those were really terrific events for those that were in headquarters company, which was the band company at the time, as well as those that happened on campus. And those are really positive memories for me at this point.
Great, thank you so much. Dave, if you'd like to answer it next.
Yeah, I concur with the comment about the parades. That was it was always tough getting ready for them, but it was always fun to be in the parades, and the band did a phenomenal job. The other thing that I thought, and I was involved in a couple of years, was a military weekend where we would invite cadets in from West Point and from Annapolis and the Citadel and VMI, et cetera.
That's right.
And we would do an exchange. And I know during my junior year, I believe it was my junior year, we a couple of us went to West Point on one of those exchanges, and it was kind of fun to see and actually live in the dorms with the West Point cadets to see, you know, the similarities and the differences. And there aren't a lot of differences, by the way. You know, we found out after talking to those guys that they went through a lot of the same stuff that we did. So there was a camaraderie in doing that. So that was probably those two events would be the highlights.
Thank you so much. And finally, Jack.
Yeah, I think everybody had to throw in the boardwalk bowl as one of them. Of course, the junior ring dance. But one of the things kind of lesser thought of and known is the basketball games in the Armory. You know, if you ever been there for a game, the Armory was very small, and you had enough seating for about 3 rows of seats, and you were actually on the line for the court. And I'll tell you, it had to be really intimidating for other people coming in to play PMC's team those days. So that was kind of the fun memories during the winter. It was nasty weather down there, going into see the gym, seeing a game.
Thank you all so much. And it seems as though we have lost one of our moderators. Not to worry. So I will ask her question for her. So the next question is, what events do you want to see continued at homecoming for the PMC alumni? Jack, if you'd like to go.
You know, definitely the broom drill. I know we're all getting older, but I imagine most of us can still carry a broom for a few more years. Definitely, I haven't been back at campus that much. I haven't seen what goes on at the homecomings. But as long as they still have a couple of flags out there for PMC and some banners and the broom drill, I'm fairly happy. So.
We definitely will. Thank you. And Dave?
Yeah, I would concur. I think the broom drill is probably the most obvious of all the ones. The thing that strikes me is, and I was thinking about this over the last few weeks, you know, in another 2 years, there's not going to be classes where we're going to come back and be able to do these kinds of things, right? The core essentially was gone in the end of '72. So I think the real struggle and challenge we're going to have is, what do we do to keep things alive? And certainly the broom drill continues on, or will hopefully continue on, but there's probably other things we need to look at to keep the memory of the school alive and well, because it is quite a legacy when you go back and look at one of the famous Rook questions, in addition to the number of screws there are in the front door of Old Main, was you know, the year the college was started in 1821, second oldest military college in the country. So there's a lot of history, a lot of legacy that we need to really make sure we don't lose.
Absolutely. Thank you. Bill?
I think the broom drill should go until we're all in electric wheelchairs driving out on the football field.
That's right.
That should go on, because that's really goes way back a long time. And I think as long as the school is willing to allow us to stagger out on the football field in the not too distant future going forward, I think is a good idea. I also think it's important for us to support the PMC Museum, which Ron and his colleagues have done a great job in organizing, and I'd like to see that to continue going forward for many years in the future. That is a thing that really memorializes the history of the school back to 1821 and the contribution that its graduates have made to this country, as well as to the school itself. So those are the two things I'd like to see continue going forward.
Great, thank you so much. And finally, Robert.
I think that, of course, the broom drill would be first, but I also think that just because we're retired or we're getting older doesn't mean that we're not making contributions and not doing good things. And I think that there should be some type of event that honors those of us, those people that really stand out, that have done something to further mankind, if you will. I know that's kind of sounds slushy, but all of us are, most of us, if not all of us, are still working and still doing things which benefit our country and society. The other thing I would like to, Ron and I talked about this briefly when I talked with him on the phone, but I would like to see some event that honors at least a roster of those of our classmates that were killed in action defending the country. I think that at homecoming, it doesn't have to be a big thing, but I think that's one thing that we have had classmates killed in action, and as all classes have had. And I think that that would be a most appropriate event to factor into the homecoming events.
Absolutely, that's extremely important. Well, thank you all for your answers. That concludes the questions that the moderators had prepared. So we're going to move into a Q&A session with the audience. So our first question is, understanding everything that you endured your first year, why did you continue your experience at PMC? Why did you stay in the program? Jack, if you'd like to start.
Yeah, I think I've always in the back of my mind had an idea that I want to have a military career. And my attendance at PMC kind of reinforced that. And as you progress through the program, you develop more and more of an idea that, yes, that's what I want to do. And that's what kept me in the program, I think. It surely wasn't my grades, but my academics. It was more of the military side of it that had me keep pushing.
Thank you. Dave?
Yeah, I would say it's a challenge. The first year was not easy, and we lost a lot of folks that decided to do other things. But to me, it was like, hey, you're here, you've invested the time, you're doing all the right things. Don't give up now. You got to see this thing through.
Thank you so much. Bill?
I think there were two reasons. The first was my classmates, that we became very close. We became brothers. And secondly, I took pride in being part of something bigger than myself. I was part of the PMC Corps Cadets. And the parades have been mentioned previously by my brothers here, but when you marched out on that field and you saw the Corps in formation on the parade field, it really reinforced that pride in being part of something bigger than yourself. I was proud of PMC, I was proud of the Corps, I was proud of my classmates, and I was proud to be part of it. And that's what kept me coming back.
Wonderful, thank you. Robert?
I just wasn't going to let anybody tell me either wasn't good enough or couldn't do it. I just decided no matter what happened, especially in the fourth class year, no matter what went on, what happened, I was not going to quit. And that goes back to an earlier question of one of the lessons that I learned. Do not quit. It's just not in me. And I wasn't going to do it. I said, they're going to have to kill me first. I'm not going to quit.
Thank you so much.
Me.
Our next question is, we have a robust ROTC program today with the exceptional cadets. What advice do you have for them as they prepare to serve our country? Robert, if you'd like to start.
Believe in yourself. and decide very early on that you are going to learn everything you can that will enable you to make positive contributions and develop people. We're in the business of building teams and building people. And without that, we really have nothing. And I don't care if you're in the Army, Marine Corps, Air Force, doesn't matter. Leaders are in the business leading, but moreover, developing people, developing potential, increasing our own potential in that process. I cannot tell you, I learn from my students every day, both graduate and undergraduate. I learn many lessons that and I learned something about myself as we move along. So I think that's valuable. So I would say, believe in yourself, decide you're going to do what's right. Remember that if you have a decision between two things, the hardest of the two is probably the right thing to do. And that would be a lesson that I would pass on, those lessons.
Thank you. And Bill?
I think a couple of things. First of all, study your profession. Learn everything you can about leadership. Practice everything you can about leadership. And as you move forward, keep in mind that you're on the cusp of having the privilege, gaining the privilege of leading American soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marine, or Coast Guardsmen. And that's a rare privilege that everybody doesn't get to have. And great leadership is something that each of those servicemen or women deserve. And that day in the future, that first day that you stand in front of a formation of servicemen or women, not just any servicemen or women, but your servicemen or women, that's when the real crucible starts. And remember that your soldiers, sailors, airmen, or Marines are going to notice your actions more than what you say. So you have to be a role model. You have to remember that integrity and honor are two of those possessions that you have, and that once you compromise them, it's extremely difficult to ever get them back. Honor and integrity. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much. Dave?
Hard to follow up after General Fike and that eloquent description. But I would say, in addition to that, the things that you learn in the military, the discipline and the leadership and all of that, prepares you for a life after the military. I can tell you from being 50 years in the semiconductor world, when we would hire people, I would always lean, and not just me, I knew a number of other people who were doing hiring, including HR staffs. We always would lean towards people with a military background. We just knew when we got those people that they were going to have the discipline, the good managerial skills, the leadership skills, and we were biased. Probably can't say that today as much as it happens, but yeah, there was a bias, at least in the companies I worked in, to look at the military people that had gone through the military or gone through one of the service academies. They just seemed to be better prepared.
Thank you. And finally, Jack?
I would say that if you're going to do something, do it right the first time. Now, I was very blessed in my military career. I was in a technical field, so I had really great soldiers. But I would go out in the first day that they would come in on board and sit down and say, you know, you're a great soldier, but think about school. You know, a B student versus an A student. You know, all that you need is that extra 10% to get from that B to an A. So make sure you add that extra effort to anything you do out here, and you'll succeed.
Well, thank you all. And speaking as one of the cadets in the ROTC program, I will definitely take that advice to heart and pass it on to my fellow cadets. So thank you. And Kyra?
Yes. Sorry, everyone. My internet went out on me, but I'm back and we're good now. So the next audience question is, You were at the PMC while the Wolf Graham Memorial Library was being built. What memories do you have about this odd triangular shaped building being erected in the middle of campus? So, Jack, you want to begin?
I think the pride I had in a way that we were actually having some new buildings built. I never got a chance really to use it that much, but just seeing that something is being developed. But also it's a little bit of a sad point because I realized at the time that the Corps was having problems. And I was kind of saying, was this a prelude to something else happening out there? And did not know that at the time. But yeah, it was interesting to see something being built new on the campus.
Yeah, that is so true. And Dave?
Yeah, that was interesting to follow the building in its construction days. And I remember a athletic, I don't know if he wasn't the athletic director, but he was the coach of the wrestling team and I think a couple of other things. I can't remember his name. I'm sure there's somebody who will help me out there, but he made a comment that I've never seen anybody go to a college because of a new library, but I've seen lots of guys go to college when there's a new football stadium. And we all kind of laughed and thought that was kind of funny. But as you go down the path of life and you look back, it was far more important to have that library built than it was to have a new stadium built. So that was kind of one of the things that stayed in my memory over the years.
Yeah, that's so true. And that library definitely comes in handy for all of our students. They come together, they work on their homework, they do projects. It's just a great place. Bill, if you want to proceed?
Yeah, just briefly, at the time, I know my classmates here will remember it. At the time, we were going to some classes in temporary buildings that had probably been there since World War II. And so it was good to see that the university was expanding and improving its facilities, and building that wonderful library I saw was a very positive thing.
Yes, absolutely. And last but not least, Robert?
I remember thinking that not only the library, and I can't remember, the library was being built. Also, it seems to me that there were some dormitories for Penn Morton College on the other side of the parade field that were built as well. And I really didn't know the impact of all of this. I thought at the time that perhaps the university will survive, get better, get bigger, and there'll always be a place for the Corps of Cadets, and it won't go away. I think that's what I thought at the time. But like Dave, it was so important because I spent a lot of time in the old library, and I'm sure that the difference between the new and the old is like night and day. So I'm glad that that it was completed, and that you folks had the opportunity to use a wonderful facility that we didn't have.
Yes, thank you, Robert. And thank you, gentlemen, for answering that audience question. We're going to proceed forward and asking another one. The next one is, if times were different and we were on campus right now for your 50th reunion, what specific place on campus would you be going to check out? In other words, what place on campus holds the most memories for you? So if Robert, if you want to start that question out for us.
Well, there are a couple of places I'd like to go. I'd like to go back to my room on the third floor of Howell Hall to see it, see what it looks like. I spent a lot of time in the arms room down at the end of the hallway, so I'd like to go see that. But they would be the two places that I would go.
Definitely.
Moreland Hall, where we used to go and check our mail, and where our mailboxes were. I'd kind of like to see that facility again.
Thank you, Robert. And Bill, if you want to proceed forward.
Like Robert, I'd like to go. I spent a lifetime, it seems, in Terrell Hall and 1 year in Howe Hall. And so I'd like to go see those. I'd like to go see my rooms, my former room. But I also like to go into Old Main and walk around Old Main and I never spent a lot of time in there, but the history of the building, going up on the porch, the so-called senior porch there, was something I'd like to do once again, sometime in the not too distant future. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Yeah, I actually lived in Howell Hall my freshman year. So, and Dave, you want to proceed forward?
Yeah, room 311, third floor, Howell Hall. That would be my first stop. And then we just spoke about the library. We never saw the fully completed library, and that would be something that would be very unique to do, to go through and see how it all worked out. And then I think just some of the other sites. Obviously, Old Main is a very, very special place. And even Kirkbride Hall and some of the other places would be interesting to go through, and I'm sure they're all smaller than they used to be when we were there.
Definitely, yes. Thank you, Dave. And last but not least, Jack.
Yeah, definitely the idea of going back to my old room. I'd like to see if the current students keep the same bed format that we had.
Yeah.
It'd be very interesting to see. The other thing is I spent a lot of time in the labs at Kirkbride Hall. So go back to there and see what's going on in that location.
Right.
And then, like everybody else said, McMorgan Center, just to go through the area. So, okay, that's it.
Thank you. Thank you, Jack. And thank you, gentlemen, for answering that question. I do wish we were back on campus right now, but hopefully sometime in the near future, you guys can go back and take a look at those wonderful things. And Hannah, if you want to proceed forward, asking the next question.
Yeah. Our next question from the audience is, what is the craziest prank that you ever did or that you ever saw? Jack, if you'd like to start.
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
What was the craziest prank that you ever pulled or you ever saw?
Is statute of limitations over? I remember I was over in, I guess, Hannah Hall and my senior year, and over in probably Cannes, I think it was the one next to it, was where the Rooks were for that year. And we were playing some pranks with a can of butane, with a little bit of a small round can, like for peanuts, punching a hole that using butane in there, lighting it and having giant flames come out the other side. I remember doing that and having I'm trying to think, it was a Sergeant Kuza that came up and saw that and just ran up there like it was the last thing on the earth going on. So yeah, I was surprised I didn't get some tours out of that one, but yes.
Thank you so much. And Dave, if you'd like to go next.
I think in my junior year, the most memorable was we smoke bombed the adjutant's office. And I wrote about this in my biography, which we thought was really going to be funny, except my roommate, Bob Grace, and I were in the room right above that. And I think the smoke actually went up and in our room more than it did staying in the adjutant's office. And we coughed and laughed, and it was quite an event. But we kept that under the lid for another year before we ever admitted who did it. That sounds like the adjutant right now.
Right.
Thank you so much. And Bill, if you'd like to go.
Yes. During my junior year, our football team was going to play a local college that I won't mention. And we thought it was a good idea to go along with some seniors from headquarters company. Our plan was to paint their statue that was in front of their university with our PMC school colors. And so late at night, we went over there and snuck up and started to paint the statue. And then the local police showed up. And while myself and a few others escaped, used our escape and evasion skills, 2 of our seniors were in fact captured and spent the night in jail. So that was our flawed prank. But that didn't go so well, at least for a couple of our buddies. It
sounds like there were some flaws in all of the pranks. Robert, if you'd like to go next.
I think the craziest thing I did, I cannot in this forum discuss the thing I saw because there's no way to clean it up. But that said, the craziest thing I did was our senior year, we had a Master Sergeant, Sisto Sakuza, and he dared me to rappel out of the 3rd floor window, and I did it on a dare, and I think somebody else was with me. I can't remember who. There were 2 of us that went out the window that day, but I remember I didn't secure, I don't remember securing my ropes, and I could have easily fallen because I was in a real hurry to get this done. But that was absolutely the craziest thing I did while I was at school.
Well, thank you all so much. I always love hearing these stories. You know, we don't do as much of that kind of stuff now, but I love hearing it. But thank you all for answering all of our questions. I'd actually like to pass it on to Jack. If you have any final thoughts, anything lastly you'd like to say?
The other moment I had there real fast, it's back to Mark Billen was my roommate. And as I said, when I got to the school, I was a bit chunky, eating square meals every day. But his mother would send a care package about every 3 or 4 weeks with brownies. So Mark, if you're out there listening, thank you for saving me all those times with brownies. So it gets back to the teamwork, and teammates. So yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Bill, if you'd like to go next.
Yeah, I owe my ability to survive at Pennsylvania Military College. A lot of the credit goes to my roommate named John Zeckner, cadet number 156, who was a very diligent student. And while he was there, we were there at night and we had enforced study hours in the evening. He really helped me become a more diligent student as well, and allowed me to get my grade point average up where I could graduate. And the only other thing was my experience at PMC, both the academic experience as well as the military experience, really helped me in so many ways throughout my life to this point. And so I'm so grateful for that experience. And I'm grateful to Widener University for hosting events such as this that helps carry on our traditions and our memories of we old men as we move forward, and pass it on to a new generation of ROTC cadets and students at Widener University. So thank you very much. I'm very grateful.
Thank you. Dave?
Yeah, I would echo what both Jack and Bill said. And I think, you know, it's been a very unique experience looking back over the 50 years. And again, I appreciate what Widener has done over the last several years of keeping the core memory alive. And again, I would just reemphasize, we need to just continue to do that. And kudos to all the folks that are involved in doing that.
Thank you. Robert?
I'm just thankful to be on the right side of the ground, still breathing, and happy to see my classmates. Some of you I haven't seen since graduation. And so when we started getting together, and Jerry Ferguson really has done yeoman work in leading this, in my judgment. I'm thankful that the university, I'm just thankful to the university because the university gave me an opportunity. You know, 1966, when I was accepted, was a rough year for our country in a lot of ways. And Pennsylvania Military College truly lived up to its reputation. There were Black cadets that went before me, but they took me, and I was always grateful for that because nobody else would. And that was, I mentioned the letters I got from Virginia Military Institute and from the Citadel and places. My father thought I was crazy in applying, but I really wanted to be an officer. And so I will be forever grateful to PMC for the opportunity to start on a trail that ended with commissioning.
Thank you all so much. And I'd like to express our appreciation on behalf of myself and the staff who put this event on, for our panelists coming to answer our questions today. And thank you to everyone who stopped in to listen. And Kyra, if you have any final thoughts?
Yes. Thank you, panelists, for coming by. We really do appreciate it. I appreciate your experiences, the stories, the laugh. It was awesome. So thank you guys so much. And thank you for everybody coming out today. We really do appreciate it. So thank you all so, so much. And we hope to have it next year on campus so
Right.
everybody can be there to see Widener. So thank you all so, so much.
Okay, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you.
Very much.
Good to see you guys.
Good to see you, Beach.
Be safe, guys.
Be
Take
safe out there. Wear your mask, y'all. In Texas speak.